Okay. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. What did you say? 1 second. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. You insist that I flee and find a safe haven within the law. Tell me, how shall that go? Well, hello, law. My name is whore. No more. No more. You, elected with politics and respectability and embraced by those I only know by a transaction in the dead of night, do not condemn my reaction when I am the one scratching at the white knuckles around my throat. Do you not know that black babies were swept away from their mothers by the real other's harsh hands? Who previously a natural safe embrace were broken, being commodified by the law. Mothers with robust chests had no children, even as they suckled her breasts. She carried the weight of a body that wasn't hers. This dismemberment started in the auction block, column 90. Slave auctions broke at the commodified bodies of both black women and men. This notion of specialized commodification where every part of the black woman was used by the white master. To him, she was a fragmented commodity whose feelings and choices were rarely considered. Her head and hat were separated from her back and hands and divided from her womb and vagina. Black women's sexuality could be reduced to gain control over a objectified vagina that could then be commodified and sold. The long-standing interest of black women's genitalia within the Western society seemed to appear in that reducing black women to commodified genitalia and vaginas effectively treats black women as potential prostitutes. Current portrayals of black women in popular culture reinscribe the commodified body parts. And they cut so deep that those who were natively alienated to the state bear the same scar. Collins 90. Prostitution represents the fusion of exploitation for an economic purpose with a demeaning treatment afforded pets. Sex can be purchased, the dimension of economic exploitation, but also one is dealing with a totally alienated being who is separated from who seemingly does not control their body. The dimension of power is domination. Commodified sex can then be appropriated by the powerful. They expect commodified sex with black women as animals to be better than sex with white women as objects. So, under the laws, these afterlife slaves are the only ones on trial. In the parallels between the female slave and the prostitute, demand that she be held responsible for all criminal liability. Historically, black women have been criminalized sexually. James 99. Sex for sale in the United States is historically racialized with unique implications for black women. Black women who work as prostitutes or sexual laborers exist under different constraints than those of women in general who live as sexual objects. Just as the most severe penalties for conviction targeted black males, disproportionately arrests for prostitution targeted black females. Black females were more visible to arresting officers. White prostitutes tend to have more access to houses of prostitution. Black women forced into lower levels of prostitution work the streets. Black females who were not engaged in sex trade but were merely walking the streets could be harassed by police. Black females were linked with sexual vice. The high visibility of black women as prostitutes mirrored the low visibility as victims of sexual assault. Police and traffickers demanded bribes from black women while ignoring judgments who abused them. White men expected black females to be sexually freer. What a white person could not or was too ashamed to ask for or demand from a white counterpart, he or she brought to a black person. Sex workers garnered the least sympathy and concern when they are assaulted. Social indifference stems from the woman's violation of conventional sexual norms and from notions of property and contracts tied to the white male. What the Don pays for, he owns or rent. He may treat his property as he wishes. Black men who escaped over prostitution tend to find themselves confronting sexual violence in other areas of employment. In the migratory flight from the South, the North proves to be an upside, making African American women vulnerable to abuse through job segregation, low wages, and menial labor. And the black woman is at the crossroads of deviant sexuality and accepted sexuality. Collins 2000. With an assumption that normalized heterosexuality, the historical Jezebel and her Hoochie counterpart, a series of boundaries, heterosexuality is constructed via binary thinking that juxtaposes male and female sexuality with male and female gender roles, pivoting on perceptions of appropriate male and female sexual expression. Men are active, women should be passive. In the U.S. society, these become racialized. White men are active, white women should be passive. Black people and other racialized groups say not say these definitions of normality mark their boundaries in this context of gender-specific white heterosexual normality. The genital or hoochie comes the racialized gender symbol of deviant female sexuality. Normal female heterosexuality is true white womanhood, whereas deviant female heterosexuality is the hot ma's black womanhood. Black woman's an allegedly deviant sexuality because it's constructed around Jezebel's sexual desires. Jezebel may be a pretty baby, but her actions as a hot mom indicate that she just can't get enough. Because Jezebel or the hoochie is constructed as a woman whose sexual appetites are at best inappropriate and at worst insatiable. It is a sure step to imagine her as a freak. And if her sexual partners become similarly stigmatized. The hyper-masculinity attributed to black men reflects beliefs about black men's excessive sexual appetite. Jezebel's excessive sexual appetite masculizes her because she desires sex just as a man does. The controlling image of the Jezebel and her hoochie counterpart constitute one side of the normal deviant binary. Broadening this binary thinking reveals that heterosexuality is juxtaposed to homosexuality as it is an oppositional, different, and inferior other. Within this wider oppositional difference, Jezebel becomes the freak on the border, demarking heterosexuality from homosexuality. Her insatiable sexual desire helps to find the boundaries of normal sexuality. Just across the border, stand lesbian, bisexual, and transgender women who are deemed deviant in large part because of their choices of sexual partners. As a sexual freak, the Jezebel has 1 foot over the line. Now I can ask you to free me, to stop you from separating my spirit from what's left of this vessel of pleasure, but the laws response time is something I have no time to measure. Don't you see? The law cannot and has not protected me or my sisters from this tightening grip. Harton in 96. Missouri v. Celia demonstrated the slave was recognized as a reasoning subject who possessed intent and rationality solely in the context of criminal liability. It was generally the slave's crimes that were on trial, not white offenses, or obviously the violence of the law. In positing the black as a criminal, the state constituted itself as the embodiment of the law, thereby projecting all culpability and wrongdoing onto the enslaved. The criminality imputed to blacks disavowed white violence as a necessary response to the threatening agency of blackness. Thus, we affirm that the prostitute should kill the pimp. I'm the one scratching at the whiting knuckles around my throat. Though separated from my bona fide moneymakers, this neck can still feel the grip of those who want my breath. The only thing I have left to take. 1. The strategies one should use in resistance is an experiential question. This question should be answered by the person in danger. It must be recognized that there are more ways than what is accepted by law. That includes violence. Phenom 63. In decolonization, there is the need of a complete calling into the question of the colonial situation. The last shall be first and the first last. Decolonization is putting into the practice of this sentence. This will only come to pass after Merson decides to struggle between two protagonists. That affirmative intention to place the last of the head of things can only try to be used all means to turn the scale, including, of course, that of violence. You do not turn any society upside down if you have not decided from the very beginning to overcome all the obstacles. The native who decides to become its moving force is ready for violence at all times. 2. Celia's act, parallel to the act of the prostitute killing the pimp, directly contradicted the law's inability to recognize Celia's ownership over her body. Thus, the killing of the pimp was a violent affirmation of her right to her body. Celia's act disrupted the current economy of enjoyment. Hartman 96. Celia's act brings a standstill through the intervention of her will. It is possible to read this act as liberating the captive body and moving from use of Celia to Celia's body. The full dimension of this act and the resignation, courage, or glimpse of possibility that might have fueled it defy comprehensive analysis. The fateful negotiation of autonomy at the side of the exploited body for both the impossibility and consent and the struggles to mitigate the brutal concerns of captivity. Ultimately, Celia was hung for this effort to claim the body and to possibly experience embodiment as full and violent and pleasurable. Led Celia to construct a boundary at the Dutch River cabin, which would shield her from the tacit violence scene befitting the relation of a slave owner and enslaved female. The Missouri court, pronouncing Celia's guilt, held that the end of the slavery system is not merely the economic profit of the master, but also the joy of the master and the sexual conquest of the slave. Celia's declaration of the limit was thus an emancipatory articulation of the desire for a different economy of enjoyment. And this action is an individual one. The black female must take on herself. Only after the self-affirmation can others take part in the healing. Collins 90. The power to see the self lies within the self. The ultimate responsibility for self-definition, self-valuation lies within the individual woman herself. An individual may use multiple strategies in her quest for an independent voice. Some women write themselves free. Acquiring a voice through writing eventually moves her to the action of talking with others. Other women talk themselves free. This journey touches one another as part of the Black women's community. They feel the member of them, but only after she's taken the first step toward finding the voice of empowerment. And there is no limit to the amount of violence the law is deemed necessary. And despite the violence, victimization, and death of the Black woman, the law does not hear cries, only guilt. The prostitute must kill the pimp because the law is illegitimate. Hartman 96. If the legal existence of the crime rate depends upon evaluating the consent or non-consent of the victim. The negation of these terms determine the meaning of enslavement. This notion of will distinguishes the autonomous agent from the enslaved. The absolute submission required of slave renders meaningless concept of consent and will. In the case of the slave woman, the law circumscribed recognition of consent and will occurred only in order to secure the subordination of the enslaved, repress the crime, and deny injury, for it is certain that the captive female was both willless and always already willing. Moreover, the utter negation of the captive's will required to secure her absolute submission was identified as willful submission to the master. To act outside the scope of willful submission was to defy the law. The surety of punishment awaited such transgressions. Whining knuckles grip my neck. My breath escapes me. I'm ready for your violence. Now gaze at me with your disgust. Ignore that you can still hear my shallow breath because I killed. Process.
All right, ready?
Yep.
All right, why vote affirmative?
You vote affirmative because the affirmative is a good idea.
No.
And
Why is affirmative a good idea?
Because the prostitute killing the pimp and the impact of like that flipping the Phenom 63 card is a good method to get there.
Okay. Then who is the prostitute?
The prostitute is the prostitute is like an oppressed body. We would argue that the Black woman is scripted as the prostitute, and since that's our like
Social position.
and ontological position, then we speak from that position. And the historical analysis in the Collins 90 cards show that progression from like the slave auctions to the prostitute today.
Okay, and then who's the pimp then?
the pimp is an oppressor. So the cards are really clear that like the law is a pimp, and that's the Hartman card talking about specifically how the law is pimp, and the 1AC is an analysis of these scripts and the way in which the 1AC like defines these different things as pimps and what a pimp is part of like the advantage of like descripting.
Okay, so you say the pimp is like an oppressor, but then what exactly? Because I feel like that's a little bit like overarching. So like, what does it mean to be like an oppressor then?
Well, what we isolate in the 1AC is this commodification and exploitation of the prostitute's body, and that is a form of oppression.
Okay, so underneath your plan, anyone who does fit
The criteria.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so
it's like
that's
like
an
example of it.
Yeah, the point of the 1AC is like that there's like this idea that the pimp is like the stereotypical white male, and that's true that there are like that specific pimps, but what the 1AC is isolating is that there's other forces that are pimping Black women's bodies and prostitutes' bodies, and even women that are in the sex trade and people that aren't in the sex trade. So, I mean, you can argue that, like, even like the Collins 2000 card, that the way in which like deviant sexual and like excessive sexuality is.
Yeah, so basically anyone who participates in that system of oppression.
I don't understand what you mean by like participates in the system of oppression.
We're giving you examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like the Collins card, towards the end is really clear that like you face different things and it's experiential. That's also the Fanon card. So like we can't define what your pimp would be. I can define what my pimp would be. I can't define like what Whitney's pimp would be. So
Okay.
like to
So what does the world look like post that?
It's that's our Fanon card with this flipping of the power structures. It's where this isn't an end, it's a means to an end. Like where we have to create the boundary at the threshold so we can create a safe space.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just gonna take a little bit of breath.
Do you have any colored pens? Did you write it mark too? What? Did you write it mark too? You could just. I didn't see that. This chocolate is it there? What's your team code? What's your team code?
HR.
Why did you put it right behind my laptop?
I
where
did.
it is?
It was on my desk. We're live right now. We're not gonna have this discussion. You gonna drop my food.
What's your
What is it? K and counterpoint?
Okay, is that?
Yeah, K is that. I'm still into the mode map stuff.
this and to the kids? Yeah. Okay.
Come on, Will. Sorry about start routine.
Are you ready? Yeah.
The problem with the app, the way that the app approaches this round begins in the very epistemology used to construct the app. By utilizing a black feminist perspective, the app has already begun from a position that divides black men and black women as two distinct groups that have to be solved for separately. The division is exactly the tactic that anti-black structures use to continue to suppress black people's rights. Black feminism was created out of white feminist movements and misses the mark in trying to address some of the key issues facing women of color in today's society, especially by not foregrounding the racial issues. Hudson Wing 2000. Women who are calling themselves black feminists need another word that describes what their concerns are. Black feminism is not a word that describes the plight of the black woman. The white race has a woman probably because the women were oppressed. Black people have a men and women probably because the black men are as oppressed as the women. Because female empowerment, the very foundation upon which agenda the black feminist thought rests, is number one priority rather than the race empowerment. Most Africana women do not consider themselves feminists, rather than the Africana womanist family centeredness, the female centeredness of feminism possesses some serious problems of the Africana woman. That in Africa, a white feminist herself even see the feminist priority as unworkable for the black woman. She says, when we place women at the center of our thinking, we are going back to business of creating a historical and cultural matrix from which women may claim autonomy and independence over their own lives. For women of color, such autonomy cannot be achieved in conditions of racial oppression and cultural genocide. In short, feminism in the modern sense means the empowerment of women. For women of color, such equality, such empowerment cannot take place unless the communities in which they live can successfully establish their own racial and cultural integrity. She must, in the same way as the African woman sees the importance of prioritizing the race factor of the black woman as a prerequisite for dealing with the question of gender. This is not to say that gender issues are not important. Attacking gender bias does not translate into mandating one's identification with our dependency upon the feminism as the only viable means of addressing them. To address women's issues, therefore, is not only to address the crucial needs of black women, it's also to address the historic primacy of African and African American community. That is the primacy of the children and the preparation for the responsibilities and privilege of mature personhood. Okay. Feminists focus on the advancements of women, where African women is focused on the advancement of African people as a whole. Hudson Women's 2000. While African women do in fact have some legitimate concerns regarding African men, these concerns must be addressed within the context of African culture. Problems must not be resolved using an alien framework that is feminism, but must be resolved from within African womenism. We cannot afford luxury, if you will, of being consumed by gender issues. It is not the question of more jobs for African women versus more jobs for African men, a situation that too frequently promotes gender competition. Rather, it is a question of more jobs for the Africans in general. These jobs are generated primarily by white people, and most Africans depend on sources other than those supplied by African people. The real challenge for African men and women has to create more economic opportunities within African communities. Many people talk about the need for enhanced African economic empowerment. If our real goal in life is to be achieved, that is the survival of our entire race as a primary concern for African women, it will have to come for African men and women working together. If African men and women are fighting within the community, they're ultimately defeating themselves on all fronts. Black feminism incorrectly approaches issues of anti-blackness in its attempt to address them. Black feminism begins in the outgrowth of white feminist thought, a literature-based and historical approach that has always argued for the advancement of women over the advancement of black people as a whole. The approach has only ever been only ever been the benefit of white women who claims to allies with black women, but ultimately only uses the bodies of political power for advancement while leaving black women behind in terms of rights and equality and further dividing the black community, leaving them unable to effectively unify and combat issues of anti-blackness. African womanism, an approach that starts with the unifying black men and black women and focusing on the needs of both groups and the community at large, developed as a critique of the black feminist to address its historical shortcomings. Further, by working within the current anti-black structures society, the act precludes the possibility of black men and women from ever being able to unify to advance the needs of the black community together. Even if the act is able to gain some kind of benefit for black women, at the point where the act excludes black men from any possible advancement or unity within the cause means the act is doomed to fail. It could never unite the black community or overcome anti-blackness. This is a solvency takeout for the L. Unity of black men and women outside of the current anti-black society and then working back against the anti-black structures is the key method in this round. It is a question of starting points in this round. The act starts from a problematic black feminist epistemology that only has ever advanced white women's interest and further divides the black community needs by focusing solely on black women. Our method of African womanism seeks to unite black men and women in the advance goals of black community first and foremost. The only approach that can actually solve anti-blackness. As a result of the shortcomings of feminism for women of color, African women should be the theoretical framework used as is grounded in Afrocentric ideologies and battles with issues of race as its core. Hudson Williams 2000. African womanism is a theoretical concept designed for all women of African descent. Its primary goal is to create their own criteria for accessing their realities, both in thought and in action. The first part of the context, Africana identifies the ethnic background of women being considered in reference for their ethnicity, especially her cultural identity relates directly to her ancestry in land-based Africa. The second part of the term womanism, in addition to taking us back to the rich legacy of African womanhood, recalls Sojourner's truth, powerful, and prompt speech. And Ain't I a Woman, in one in which she battles with the dominant alienating forces in her life as a struggle African woman, questioning the accepted idea of womanhood. Even though she went in the all-white women's convention in Akron, Ohio in 1852 to voice her opinion about the absurdity of female subjugation, she was forced to address the race issue first, as she was hissed and jeered at because she was black, not because she was a woman. She said she was among the community of women. She was the other side of the coin, the co-partner of her male counterpart in the struggle for her people, one who, unlike the white woman, received no special privileges in American society. The term woman, but and by extension, womanism, is far more appropriate than the term female feminism, as only a female of the human race can be a woman. Female, on the other hand, can refer to the member of the animal or plant kingdom as well as the members of the human race. The United States of America, as part of the European world, is on the verge of self-destruction and no longer has the capacity to correct itself. Akbar 96. One of the things that helps humans beings modify their conduct naturally is the understanding that though they have great strength, they also have real limitations. One of those things that lets human beings come back to balance is the realization that there are things which naturally limit them. But once people get an inflated idea of who they are and what they are, they do not have the capacity to naturally correct themselves. They begin to do things that ultimately destroy themselves. When people unrealistically perceive what they are, they begin to create a situation whereby they cannot naturally correct themselves. The European world is on the verge of self-destruction because it no longer has the capacity to correct itself. It has gotten somehow consumed by its own consumption. It has made itself hated by nations around the world because it cannot naturally correct itself in addition to access. They are drunk on the idea of being like the image that they portray as God. Because the imperial world cannot fix its own flaws, is why the learning to reform the system from within obliterates any effective solvency. It is bad for educational purposes. It will provide debaters with the counterproductive portable skills. Derek Bell, in his 2008 article, Race, Racism, and American Law Rights, blacks had the most of their effort into simulation or interrogation that required a denial of selfhood, but emulation of whites has not led to a simulation. At best, some middle-class blacks have become acceptable to liberal whites. Civil rights laws are generally unenforced and their penalties are not severe. Moreover, even when the laws were obeyed, white attitudes towards black did not change. Persecution in many forms continues. A revolution is not on the horizon. Even if it were, it could well replace one racist society with another. The only viable alternative for blacks is to separate themselves from the United States. As a result, the counterplan is for black people to secede from the United States and to kill the white family. As a counterplan.
Ready for cross-ups?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's your counterplan?
To secede from the United States and to kill the white family.
How do you secede?
You secede these, what do you mean? The United States? Like secede?
No, like how do you secede? Like what does that look like for black people to secede?
That's the force, like leaving these anti-black structures and then fighting back against these anti-black structures.
All right. Okay. Where would you go?
you leave the white institutions.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right. So you want to kill the white pimp. What your Hudson and Weems card talks about the difference between saying woman and female. What is that like the basis of? Is that like your
Women and
link?
feminism, like it's
Yeah.
basically saying African womanism and black feminism are two different things. Like black
How?
feminism, because black feminism came from feminism, which was to help white women. So when we have these movements with black feminism and we have these allies with white women, like it only helps.
So
them.
are
It
you
doesn't
saying
help-
that black feminism is just the feminism's ally?
I mean, yeah. And
Okay.
then the black
So,
feminism, like
black
when we have the
feminism-
movements and the stuff to
Okay, so
move black
black
women, it only helps white women.
Okay, so helping black women only helps white women. Okay, why is our epistemology bad? And where in the 1AC does the AF separate black men and black females?
Well, because the ad excludes black men.
How?
It's specifically like with the,
You said the prostitute was the black woman that's out.
yeah, we're talking about.
Is the black female scripted as the prostitute?
You said it was.
I'm just asking, are you conceding that the black female is scripted as the prostitute? Like stereotypically, black female is prostitute.
No, we
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
process.
I'm asking you that, like, so how does by talking about the prostitute, you're saying that the black female is, by talking about the prostitute, you're saying that we're not talking about black male.
We're
No,
saying that-
it's specifically about like the literature base that you use, and specifically about the authors that you use, and specifically the way in which that interacts within this round. What we're saying is that by focusing on these different issues, it ultimately ignores this issue of it ultimately puts race essentially on the back burner. Where first we have
So
to
talking
focus-
about black females puts race on the back burner?
No, we're saying we're not saying specifically talking about black females. Specifically, what we're saying is that first it has to focus on like a type of unity, and then we can focus
So
on like
That
So
unity
we-
comes before self-actualization.
sorry, what?
That unity comes before self-actualization for the black female.
What? Well, in the case of like actually trying to like attack these
Anti-black structures.
Okay.
So is your plan unique? Like, is this happening in the status quo? People are putting race at the forefront?
sorry, I'm a little wait, what?
Like how? We're gonna take some prep. Yeah, we're gonna do some.
Alright, I'm gonna put the card on this. Is that okay? Or I'm gonna put the cards on this flash.
Can I ask one question? What's the link?
Of the
What's the link to the K?
Yeah, the link is like the black. The link is like the black men's link.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? Stop her. Wait, no, never mind. Can't read it, what remember it. Stop right there. So this is 33.5. So it should be 10, 20, or not 10, 26, 28.
It's Tracy card studies. Yes, you're welcome.
I should have It's gonna be case then K. It's gonna be case. And then it's gonna be the K with the new card on the K.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to flash over one more card. Can I get your flash drive back?
Doing that up for me, guys.
Was it the A2? A2?
Yeah. Okay, everyone ready?
Are y'all ready?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait. They have not contested the entirety of the 1AC. We are controlling uniqueness, cross-collide the first two columns cards, which is the constitution is a combination of the commodification and alienation. They concede that the black woman is scripted as the prostitute. That is the sexually appropriated by the powerful, and that all black women can be seen as protected prostitutes. The James 99 evidence is this understanding. It says that this understanding is vitally for legalization or any other policy action or any other action because it illustrates the way in which the prostitute interacts with the law, showing that the prostitute is at an inherent disadvantage when it comes to her positionality. So acting within the scope would never solve for the prostitute. The 1AC is a necessary first step. We have self-actualizing the 1AC and performing our affirmation of killing the pimp. This self-actualization is in many forms. We have deconstructed the debate space of clear symbol of anti-blackness given its history of exclusion by taking advantage of our time to take our platform and speak. And in this way, self-actualization is a continuous process in which we create this boundary at the threshold and enact proactionary violence in order to end the tacit violence that hurts the prostitute. The 1AC in this space is uniquely important because whereas we can be attacked by the silence by the anti-blackness in the status quo, no one can silence us during our 96-minute speeches. The performance of the 1AC has disrupted the economy of enjoyment, similar to how Celia's Act disrupted the economy of enjoyment when she created value at the threshold of her cabin. Our use of clean poetry, speaking together, call and response in the ethos of this disruption. This means that the 1AC has access to the giant inner and external impacts of self-actualization. You will ask on presented. And onto their counterplans. Literally, if you don't understand how they're gonna do this, then you don't vote at, and then you will act. They talk about how black people should secede from the United States, but they give no clear way of how they can succeed. Texas tried to secede. One of the biggest states in America tried to secede in 2012, and they couldn't even do it. So they need the fact that they haven't given a specific way in which black people could secede from the United States or where they would go and escape institutions of anti-blackness that are inherent in society. Then you don't vote next. It's an ontological position, so you cannot escape it just by seceding. Okay, And onto the MIT card, and coalition movements push some identities to the background, usually Black females. MIT EDU. The Black feminist movement grew in response to the Black liberation movement and the women's movement. Black women were being racially oppressed in the women's movement and sexually oppressed as the Black liberation movement. Black was equated with Black men, and women was equated with white men. Black women were an invisible group whose existence and needs were ignored. The movement could adequately address the way race, gender, and class were interconnected in their lives to take action to stop racist, sexist, and classist discrimination. Although neither all the Black men nor all the white women in their respective movements were sexist and racist, enough of those with powerful influence were able to make the lives of Black women in these groups almost unbearable. Black women faced constant sexism in the Black liberation movement. The movement was for the liberation of the Black male. Race was extremely sexualized in the rhetoric of the movement. Freedom was equated with manhood, and the freedom of Blacks with the redemption of Black masculinity. The assumption that racism is more harmful to Black men than it is Black women, because the real tragedy of racism is the loss of manhood. This assumption illustrates an acceptance of masculinity defined within the context of patriarchy, and as well as a disregard for the human need for the integrity and liberty felt by both men and women. Black men in the movement were interested in controlling Black men's sexuality, bell hooks, garments. Black men overemphasized white male sexual exploitation of Black women, and as would explain their disapproval of interracial relationships. There is, however, no contradiction of the political views that have interracial relationships. Cut the card there. And it's not unique. The current racial struggle sacrifices the Black female already. The alt-right from disclosed ignorance of the death of the Black females like Tanisha Anderson, Yvette Smith, and Shelley Frey. This is a solvency takeout. When you see all the Black males that are taken, but you do not see the names I've just read, this is what the alt looks like. No link. The use of Patricia Hill Collins does not meet the one you see the Black that they critique as bad. No link. Even if you buy that we promote Black feminism, it's not different. It's not different from womanism. And the app is the all creating violence to stop violence. The app is a call for gratuitous violence. This is gratuitous freedom. For gratuitous freedom. The James 99, even Black women who are not involved in the sale of sex are linked with vice by their very being, and thus seen as prostitutes. And those who try to escape this violence and other forms of work are vulnerable to abuse. And they send Hartman 96, the resignation, courage, and glimpse of possibility is a call for gratuitous freedom. And you do you, we do us. You say womanism, we say Black femme. You say extend Collins' self-definition of the job of the individual, and the individual must use whatever individual strategies they see fit. If they see that Black African feminist womanism is good, then they can do that. If we see that our stance is good, then we can do that. Yeah, and also there's a complete solvency takeout in their counterplan, because they literally say kill the white pimp. That misunderstanding of our flipping of the script misunderstands that there are Black pimps, there are white pimps, there are female pimps, there are male pimps. So if they only take out the white pimps, they ignore the inherent structures in society, like the institutions that constantly pimp the prostitute, like the law. And so you can. So there's too many problems if you vote act. And their feminism doesn't account for the Black female body. Taylor 98. White feminism doesn't account for the Black female body. Taylor 98. Feminine body does not always possess a feminist consciousness. Many contemporary Black women are ambivalent about identifying themselves as feminists, though most celebrate historical Black feminist traditions. Many Black women acknowledge these contributions to African American life without embracing their feminist meanings. Is this on the K? Yeah. This is on the K. Far too many link the feminist movement exclusively to the activism of bourgeois and white women, and not the struggles initiated by African Americans for freedom, justice, and equality. During monumental historical periods, countless numbers of Black women are activists developed a distinctly feminist consciousness that gave them an agency to strive for empowerment on their own terms. To say that Black femme is simply just the sidekick to white feminism shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what Black feminism is, and that's going to be an educational disad. Yeah, and their Hudson and Weems cards on their K completely ignored the peculiar situation of the Black female compared to the white male. Yes, they're both impacted by race, but ignoring the differences and the different way in which society sees those two individuals is inherently problematic. They say that the Black female is as oppressed as the Black male, and that's in their Hudson and Weems card. And just to say that they are as impressed ignores the ways in which they're oppressed. It's easy to say that both groups are oppressed, but when you don't get into the distinct particularities of how they are oppressed, there's no way for you to solve for those particular oppressions. And they say that, and again, we're just gonna attack their uniqueness. They talk about what is our MIT cards, like just to break it down. The 1AC is a good idea. They haven't contested it. The prosecutor should kill the pimp. They even say that the pimp should be killed. The problem with the counterplan is that it isolates one pimp. That's why the AF is a good idea, because not only does it flip the script of the black prostitute, of the black female prostitute, it also flips the script of what a pimp is. It's stereotypically the white male and sometimes the black male, but by flipping these scripts, we understand that there are bigger pimps in society, and when you understand that you are at a better vantage point to fight those pimps, and the fact that they think that self-actualization of the black female should come after the liberation, the secession of black people, just supercharges our MIT cards, which talk about how when you don't first talk about the individual peculiarities of people, then you ignore those things and you put some bodies to the back. And that's what we're talking about with how race has become masculinized. And their cards only talk about the negative aspects of the white feminist movement, which we don't contest, but we also add that there's inherent problems with the entire black movement, and the 1AC is great for creating the boundary at the threshold in order to enact this reactionary violence to create the space where black females can actually interact with these different power structures and flip those power structures so they can self-actualize. So you vote F. And their starting point debate is the MIT card showed that the liberation movement in Black femme is an a priori issue. And self-actualization is the a priori issue because and it's the starting point.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, the MIT card says coalition movements push some identities to the back. What coalitions is the negative?
Okay, the next says that the neck literally talks about a race coalition because you're talking about the unifying of the black females and the black males.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
that's what we're talking about is that your idea of a coalition doesn't recognize the individuals in those coalitions and how they're affected differently by society. So if you put black females and black males first and put race first, you ignore how society affects the different genders differently.
We should put women before putting ourselves.
We're saying that we should put self-actualization before, and the MIT card is a clear example of what, you're saying that we are putting race at the forefront, and what Nicole says is it supercharged the MIT card because race has become masculinized. So when you think of race, you only think of black men. That's why we gave the examples of Tanisha Anderson, Yvette Smith, and Shelley Frey, because that's what that looks like. When you look on the news and you only see black males that are killed.
Women and men are black.
What?
Well, we're saying
why not vote negative?
Well,
I mean, we saw for women and men.
well, we're also
The MIT cards say that you don't solve for women and what?
yeah, we're saying that at best you would solve for men only. And we also have a bunch of solvency issues because you isolate the white pimp and you ignore all other pimps and structures.
Okay, so you said we ignore all other structures like the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other types of pimps.
And the process of the one you said the white male was like the dominant figure of the pimp.
I said the white male is the stereotypical pimp, but the re-scripting in the 1AC shows that thing, like the Hartman card shows that the
my
law
question
is
is, you said we ignore things like the law. Who created the law?
Wait, are you U.S. law? I mean, there's laws.
Who created these structures these structures.
In the United States, the Constitution was written by white males.
Okay. Yeah. So killing the white pimp.
What we're saying is that is a band-aid solution. If you kill one white male or you kill all the white males, there's still going to be other bodies that can enact violence on the prostitute.
Yeah.
You can't just say that that's solvency.
No, but what I'm saying is these white bodies.
Are y'all created
these white structures. How do we not? Killing the white pimp is getting rid of the structure.
Well,
It's
Nicole
not-
also made the argument that like it's an ontological position. So it's like even if you secede from the United States, like even if you kill the white pimp, because the James 99 card, the black female body is linked with violence, then that is simply a
But why
band-aid
is the black women, female body linked with violence? Because of what structures that who created?
like what we're saying is like in the beginning it was created like that, but the mutation that has occurred today is evident in that like you can't just kill the white pimp.
And I'll go ahead, start right. How does this term work?
What? Okay, the perm. The first one is perm. Well, it's not like a perm. It's like just saying that the app is the alt. There's a perm.
The
You
app
do you.
is the alt?
Yeah, because the app is like you're saying that we need to do this like this movement for like some kind of gratuitous freedom from like the restraints of like the United States or whatever, and the app already does that. It's already moved towards that. The you do us, we do you is like
You do
the
you, we do us.
yeah, you do you, we do us. That's like you in your Hudson and Weems card. You attack that like our use of feminism rather than women, even though like there's no feminism. Like if Whitney we're saying that if Whitney buys that like we are black feminists and not just reading books from black feminist thought, then it's fine that you say womanism and we say feminism. But if you just simply vote neg, then you have that solvency deficit where that's the MIT cards.
Okay.
I need a water. There's also a term to both. Yeah. And just
Mark?
I'm gonna take the DA into the campaign.
One of the
Yeah, in the farms.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, you guys can look at it.
Huh.
Listening. And then you have to see that.
My computer can survive. That's
You can't take no chances.
What is it called?
20 one cuts.
Okay. Straight in case.
Sorry.
Oh, you can.
Okay. Everybody ready? First, we ultimately have to look at what exactly the differences are between the affirmative and the negative. You can see that ultimately with the affirmative, they're just trying to reform the current structures. This is something that went uncontested within the 2AC. The negative, however, understands that currently the white world is essentially on the path to destruction. You can extend the Akbar card from the 1NC, specifically that because like even if we do try to attempt to reform this world, ultimately it's already on its way to destruction, which makes any kind of education that we can potentially get from the affirmative as unnecessary, because essentially the white world, this European world, is already on the road to destruction. So as a result, the skills that we will learn and how to interact within this world are ultimately going to be useless later on in life. However, the counterplan is going to be much better for this, because we actually see that we actually have to leave these current white structures. They specifically are bringing up the example of like Texas and how that tried to secede. However, that's completely antithetical to like what we're doing. It does, and there are essentially no parallels between Texas and us. And you have to see that ultimately we're leaving these structures that are actually causing these different types of things. We're leaving the structures that create the system where the pimp and the prostitute are. We're leaving these types of structures, and we're attempting to fight outside of it. This does not mean like a fiscal. This does not necessarily mean like a physical separation. Although we're not limiting it to that. However, we ultimately have to understand that only by separating ourselves from these structures is the only way that we can actually try to fight back against these structures. That's the only way we can try to fight back against these structures. You can see that, Frances Cress Wilson, in her book, The ISIS Papers, articulates her color confrontation theory and how it has led to whites to engage in genocide on non-white groups out of fear of genetic annihilation. This is evident in how the police state has functioned as a large contributor to the largest system of racism and white supremacy. She defines the theory as Wilson 91, a local and global power structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white. The ultimate purpose of the system is to prevent white genetic annihilation on Earth, a planet in which a overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white and are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetically recessive white-skinned people. And because the black male has the greatest potential to cause white genetic annihilation, the black male poses the greatest threat to white genetic survival and thus the primary target of white supremacy system. Wilson 04. And the reason that the black male is and always has been central to the issue of white supremacy is clarified by the definition of racism as white genetic survival. In the collective white psyche, the black males represent the greatest threat to genetic survival because only males of any color can impose sexual intercourse, and black males have the greatest genetic potential. Black males have the greatest genetic potential of all non-white males to cause genetic annihilation. Thus, black males must be attacked and destroyed in a power system designed to assure white genetic survival in the white supremacy mindset, subconsciously or subconsciously. Black males must be destroyed in significant numbers, just as there were in early days when there was widespread open lynching and castration of black males, or in the Tuskegee syphilis study from 1932 to 1972, when large number of black males were used and destroyed by whites. And you can ultimately see that this is why the counterplan is necessary. By saying that we're only trying to destroy the white pimp, it ultimately spares black men, because black men are already looked at as like this essentially this ultimate weapon of genetic annihilation underneath the negatives plan. Ultimately, even if at the point where they are saying we should just destroy all of them, it ultimately ignores how these power structures have created the black people, created the black people in the first place, as well as the fact it's literally doing what white people want them to, what white people want them to do, which is provide for the genetic survival of provide for the genetic preservation of white people, and as a result, the affirmative in this round is only going to be supporting that. Is only going to be supporting that, which is why we have to spare these other people. It basically through their black women, it's essentially going through and destroying like all these things, which is ultimately going to be detrimental to any type of coalition. At the point where they really reject any type of coalition within this round, this ultimately means that they were never going to be able to solve for anything other than black females who are considered the prostitute within this round. As a result, that's going to be a huge solvency deficit. In addition, because they're literally saying that they don't want any type of coalition, so it means that even past solving for even past problem for racism, sexism towards black women, even other types of white power structures that have been created, specifically things like capitalism, heteronormativity, they're never going to be able to solve for those things at the point where they reject any type of coalition within any types of coalitions within this round. At least the negative at the point still opens up the space to try to attack these different types of things. However, the affirmative is never going to be able to solve for those. In addition, with the permutation arguments, you ultimately have to see that the permutations are ultimately not going to work because they never really address the Akbar card, and specifically about how reformism, which is exactly what the affirmative is bad. The reformism is bad because all it's going to do is just attempt to reform the current white system, even though it's already on its way to destruction. And in addition, just attempt to flip the power structures is just an attempt to reforms. It's just an attempt at reform because it's just trying to put different people in those positions of power. The only thing that we can do is actually lead the system through the counter plan, which is the only thing that does that within this round.
Leaving the system doesn't mean literally just leaving the United States. Like it means leaving these white structures and fighting back against them.
Yeah, it doesn't literally mean leaving these spaces. Means that we have to get away from these different types of structures and then try to fight back against these different structures. Yeah, and only by fighting back against these different types of structures, that's the only way that we can actually try to destroy these different power. Yeah, only way we can destroy these different power structures. Sorry, I didn't put this card in, but I'll give it to you immediately. And the institution does not allow for reform. The only resort is revolution. Rabago 7. Everything considered, the title of the universe claimed by white folks is faulty. DuBois called into question white supremacy, referring to it as early as 1910 as the new religion of whiteness. White supremacy would and will not end unless and until the values endemic to it and associated with it are rejected or replaced by radical, and I want to say, following Peter McLaren, revolutionary, multicultural, and uncompromising ethical views and values, and the Emancipation Proclamation, Reconstruction, and Civil Rights Movement indicate changes in the law and its interpretation and application do always translate into racial justice and social transformation. White supremacists, social views, and values linger long after amendments have been made and laws changed. Therefore, law focus, critical white states, and critical race theory provide at best only part of the picture. You ultimately have to see that even if they do try to reform the system, all they're going to do is allow those same white supremacist values to remain even after the law changes. They're saying that they're not going to try to change the law. We ultimately have to see that just by reforming the system, it still allows those white supremacist views to linger on. The only way that we can actually try to attack those different white supremacist views is outside the system and by creating a revolution. That's why the counterplan is used, because we can actually create that revolution as opposed to the affirmative, which is just going to be tried to be a reform of the system within this round. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm going to answer the perms a little specifically with the perm principle that we can do us and they can do that. However, that's not going to be possible within this round because we're making specific indicts of their epistemology as well as of their accuracy statement. That's not going to be they can't just.
African womanism is a critique of black feminism.
Yeah, at the point where African womanism is literally a critique of black feminism, that is the point in which that is the point at which the permutation can no longer function. In addition, we specifically talk about how we have to kill the white pimps as opposed to killing all pimps, because ultimately, but just by going straight through and killing all pimps, ultimately that's going to ignore how those power structures have affected those non-white pimps, and have literally put them into situations in which they find that being a pimp is the best situation. However, because we actually try to account for those different situations and those different power structures that actually put people into those positions, that allow people to be put into those positions of power. That's the point at which the affirmative is ultimately going to fail, because ultimately they're not actually going to be examining the structures that put them into those positions in the first place. The only thing that they attempt to do is try to flip the scripts. However, that doesn't account for these different types of pimps and prostitutes. They essentially have a single view of the prostitute within this round and a single view of the pimp within this round. However, with our view, we actually have multiple ways in which to view, and that's only through the counterplan can we actually solve for these different types of power structures. Can I see the flash drive? I'll just see.
So we'll just start prep start cross-sex after they clash. Is that okay with you? I'm just gonna go into the bathroom.
Can I ask you a question, please, Whitney? It's about like so the stuff about the perm, did you put it on the K or did you put it on the case? Okay.
It'll just be in 2 and C extra.
Thank you. I put it on your computer. Okay, are you ready for the assets?
Yeah.
Okay. What is reform?
What is reform?
Yes.
Reform is attempt at like changing the system like from within. That's what we.
Is the one AC changing the system from within? How is the one AC changing the system
At the
from
point where
within?
you say that you just want to like flip the script and
Is that not changing, like destroying the power structures?
No, that's not, no,
That's
it's not
literally
destroying them.
that's literally
It's flipping
preserving.
them, like you said.
Oh, so would preserving them be like, let's say, like leaving the institutions intact to fight against them? Aren't you preserving them by leaving them intact?
No, if you look at the counterplan, like in just the first part, then yeah, that would be true. But however,
That's
you have
why
to
we
look at the
say
counterplan.
leave these systems and then kill the white people, like fight back against them.
Yeah, from outside the system.
Yeah.
That's aided
So
through.
the African removing them, like that's the main.
Okay, I just have a question. All right, so you're saying that we don't attack heteronormativity? How don't we attack heteronormativity?
Specifically, it's what the 2AC was talking about, and when you were talking about like these coalitional structures, and you literally said that you were rejecting these different types of.
Okay, how does the Collins 2000 card that talks about how the black woman is at the crossroads, demarking deviant sexuality from accepted, homosexuality from heterosexual, how does that not resolve that?
Yeah, it doesn't resolve that because like you specifically talked about how you reject these different types of coalitions, which means that any type of attacking any other type of power
Okay,
structures
so
is also
how does the
going to
1AC
fail.
reject coalitions?
Huh?
How does the 1AC reject coalitions?
The affirmative rejects coalitions at the point where you read card
Remember,
2AC.
That coalitions are bad. So how does the a priori issue that self-actualization should come first not resolve that?
That doesn't resolve that
Because
because
you're saying it's bad. Like you never said, oh, let's do this first, and then that like literally
Our
say
coalition's bad? Do you agree with our card?
No, we're saying like coalition within the Black community is not bad.
Okay. How are you not parallel to Texas leaving, like seceding?
because Texas is an entirely different state. Ultimately, that's like once you come under like law.
But you're talking about Europe.
Huh?
You're talking about Europe in your cards. Your cards are talking about Europe.
Let's comment the European world self-destruction.
Okay, what's this Wellsling 04 card that you're talking about? Black males are attacked because of their genetics.
Yeah, so like Wilson's color confrontation theory ultimately comes down to like she's saying that white people ultimately fear people of color because they believe that ultimately it's going to lead to genetic annihilation. They
But is it people of color or is it black men?
Hmm?
Wait,
She
is your
points out-
card
yeah,
talking
she-
about people of
yeah,
color
yeah,
or black men?
Yeah.
It's talking about black men? Okay,
It's talking
so
about-
how
it's
does
talking-
that,
no.
how does that account for the fact that black women give birth to these babies?
So it's specifically talking about like not just people of color, but also black men. She talks about how they have the greatest potential for genetic annihilation because it's literally because they can have sex so many different times. And yeah, that leads to genetic annihilation.
Are y'all taking part?
Yeah.
I don't.
Stop it.
Do you have any more cards?
No.
Okay.
I'm thinking the K and the firm is the app is off. Do I have to send it? Our Hudson Wings evidence says Black feminism was created out of white feminist movements and misses the mark in trying to address some of the key issues facing women of color in today's society. This is why we prefer African women over Black feminists because the AF made a claim that in its current status quo that all racial issues are looked at in a man's point of view, like the trans society doesn't bring up women's racial issues and things. That is why we unify the Black community, where the oppressed is seen as one instead of just black men's race issues and Black women's race issues. Like when you unify the Black community, then you solve for the harms of the both. Like just solving for Black women, you excluding the harms of the Black males. But under African womanism, you are focusing on the oppressed as a large. So when you unify them, we actually solve for that, and we solve for the harms of for both of the community of the Lord. Under only the app, they don't get that solved this seat. And the Hudson Weaving's evidence also said because of female empowerment, the very foundation upon the agenda of the feminists. That is like their number one priority. So therefore, they also, that's another reason they don't get to the solvency of the Black community as a whole, because the Black feminist approach is only about the agenda of the women. And that's and like their evidence, the literature base excludes the Black male. And that's why African womanism solves better, because we're also solving for the entire community, the male, female, and the children. And that's where the AF claims itself, affirmation should be the point A, and then the unifying of the community should be pointed through, but through the process of black feminists, like we have explained, we explained in the one is like that only improves the white women in today's society. Like, so under their method, like it's not gonna work for them. They don't have solvency, so it's not gonna work for the black women because it has been shown that these feminist movements only help white women. Says for the women's movements, for example, that they use, like what do? They only help the white women in, but they was allies with the black women at the time, but they never. I mean, white women got the right to vote and black women didn't. So that just shows like those feminist movements don't solve. And And not only said that, like our husband Weems Everson says, so she must, in the same way as the African women, see the importance of prioritizing the race factor of black women as a prerequisite for dealing with the questions of gender. This is not to say that gender issues are not important. So, like, we're not saying that the horns of the ass of the black women that they have described is not important, but attacking gender bias does not translate in mandating one's identification with our dependency upon feminism as the only viable means of addressing it. So, therefore, that's where African womenism solves better, because it's not saying that that you have to mandate your identity, but you can have this a method that solves for all black people that are oppressed. And actually their ULA 98 card like doesn't link to them. Like it actually should be switched to the flow paper as offense for the name, because they say white feminism doesn't account for the black female body. That is exactly why we're saying we don't use like feminism, period. Like that's the whole argument that we're saying. Like that's why we're saying that we should use Africana womenism, because like women's evidence says the term woman and by extension womenism is far more appropriate than the term female. Feminism, as only a female that has human rights can be a woman. Female, on the other hand, can refer to the member of the animal or plant kingdom, and that is exactly that's our evidence shows. Oh well, yeah. This is more. This shows that the app is more likely to be co-opted by things that speciesism and all that plant kingdom stuff. And this is also why they don't get a link to the term that the app is the all, because black feminism, as we have shown, is only for their number one agenda is for females, and African women is for black people as a whole, and that is you can actually have that we create a greater impact. Like we have more solvency for the black community as oppressed. We solve better for these anti-black structures as a whole, rather than having black feminism that only puts they only put the women agenda first. But even when you do that as a black woman in black feminism, you're still like you have these movements where only white women are their lives are improved and their rights are better off. And under African womenism, as our husband Weems then shows, like you're creating jobs for the Africans, you're creating a better lives for the children and the black males, because we're solving better because we are solving for the oppression of, and we're providing a method to solve for and a counter plan to solve for the oppressed black community, rather than just the black female. And but we're not we still realize that with black women, women and black male are oppressed in different ways. But if we solve for these, we kill the white pimp, these structures that have caused the oppression, like then you kill for both. But under the act, you don't get that solvency because you don't solve for the black community, you don't unify the black community. And like we still get the solvency of the self-affirmation, because it might not be point A, but you still get it because you get that solvency because of you're unifying. And then you can have self-affirmation once you kill the oppression as a whole, because you're killing the white pimp. So we still get the solvency of self-affirmation. We just said the starting point should be African womenism instead of just focusing on the feminism, black feminism that only helps white women. So I only have 10 seconds.
I used 320. I'm gonna go overview, overview on top, then to the perms straight, and then I'll go to the my bed. Okay. Come here.
Is everyone ready? They have not contested the entirety of the 1AC extend college that talks about the commodification and alienation. There's no link to this heteronormativity, capitalism, and racism deficit because the Collins ID card talks about classism. The James 99 card talks about the different levels of prostitution. The Collins 2000 card talks about heteronormativity and how the Black female demarks that area. And Black females are Black, so we are talking about racism. At the point in time when they say that we have to put race at the forefront but ignore that Black women are in fact Black, that means that they don't solve. They have not contested that the Black female is scripted as a prostitute. They have not contested our methods of constructing the debate space by taking advantage of our platform and speaking. They have not discussed our use of poetry, our use of speaking together and speaking call and response, and the performance of the 1AC has disrupted the economy of enjoyment, and our use of ethos and call and response impact, and all give us access to the only in-round impact, which is the self-actualization, which is an a priori issue in this entire debate space. And that's particularly because of the fact that the reason these coalitions don't work, the MNT cards, the reason these coalitions don't work is because people are not holistic in themselves and don't understand the problems that they themselves face. And the neg is the one acting, and
status quo. So onto the perms. The perms are not answered coming out of the box, so you can vote on the perms there. The F is the all, and creating violence to stop the violence, and the fact that we do discuss heteronormativity in our Collins card, classism in our James card, capitalism in our Collins card, racism because we're Black females, means that the F is the all, and that means that we solve for that large part that they're talking about. We need to be able to seek this gratuitous freedom, and we are working we need to escape these places where we're vulnerable to abuse. Extend Hartman 96, the courage, resignation, and glimpse of the possibility is a call for gratuitous freedom. And this answers back there, Rabaco 07 card that says that we literally need a radical reform. And they do not link that we resolve that through our radical prostitute killing pin flipping the script, because we're not the reform they're talking about. Literally in their card, they talk about reform through law and how we need to, when they talk about working within, they're not talking about us being inside the United States, they're talking about us using laws. So that's going to resolve that. Perm, you do us, we do you. There's no answer to the Taylor 98 card, that's the ULA card, saying that like one, there's nowhere in the one AC that we say like Black feminism, this is it. We read Patricia Collins' Black feminist thought. So that's the ULA card, that the first part of it that says that like you don't need to be a Black feminist scholar to embrace those traditions, even if you don't directly like rock with that. But the second part of the card is even if you buy that we are Black feminist thought, that means that you still go for, you supercharge this education dissent, because they show a clear misunderstanding of what Black feminism is, and it's not white feminism's sidekick. And the card literally talks about how when you isolate feminism to like bourgeoisie white feminists, then you ignore the struggles for autonomy and agency that Black females have done, and that's problematic. Now they also say that the Taylor card is also going to justify the perm do both, which is also not answered, which says that some Black women do not identify as Black feminists to celebrate the traditions. So that means that they can't do womanism and call it womanism. We can do feminism. They don't answer that these are just shallow links of omission. Like you said womanism, so we say we say womanism. You didn't exactly say womanism, but we're going to assume that you're feminism. That's not a good link. And also the perm do both. We don't preclude, the Collins 2000 card is it says that different people use different strategies, so we don't preclude them from using their type of womanism. Well, we say that you can't specifically vote for the neg because of the MIT cards, which are the solvency takeout, which aren't answered, and that's the non-unique claim that was also not answered, that with the putting race as they define it, the masculinization of race at the forefront, means that you don't hear about people like Tanisha Anderson, Yvette Smith, and Shelley Fright. Though literally, there's no answer to the fact that the all is literally when you turn on the TV and you see the news and all these Black lives that are killed, and not one of them are these women that are ignored. What? Their Wesleyan card literally calls Black males the greatest threat to white genetics, which discounts the fact that Black women have been targeted for practicing hysterectomies. Black women were the vessels that were used to create the slaves. It ignores all this, and those are the kind of deficits that happen when they're the ones ignoring Black. Yeah, when they do that. So extend the MIT cards. They say that, which ignores the history, and it shows that that's why the coalitions don't work. And the a priori issue here is the self-actualization. The only impact is the self-actualization. It hasn't been contested. Also, there's no answers coming in the block about Nicole's examination of like their secession. Like they don't give you a clear idea of what that secession looked like. The only radical act that has been presented in this round is the 1AC's claim that the prostitute should kill the pimp, and they ignore the fact that it's an ontological positioning, the J99 card, that says that it's Black women are linked with sexual advice. So like even if it started with white men doing bad things, then the Black skin, that's like when we say those who have the same skin bear that same scar. It means that even if you escape the white pimps, and that's also going to be another problem for them, because they said we need to understand those pimps, but that just reaffirms why the coalition more. Their cards are okay, are white femmes, not our femmes.
I don't think we actually had 330. I think we had 226. I didn't really look at that.
Okay.
older kids if they only can. Yeah, kind of. I was kind of confused with that. What's your roadmap?
So first I'm going to talk about the cake, and then we're going to talk about
Okay.
All right, is everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
You guys ready? Ultimately, at the end of this round, we have to see exactly what the negative is critiquing. You got to see that African women is a direct critique of Black feminism and the way in which the affirmative uses Black feminism. You can see throughout the entirety of the one. You see the affirmative continuously pulls from the literature base of Black feminists. They continue to talk about problems that are happening for Black women at the point where they're doing this within this round. That proves that they're the same Black feminism that African womanism is actually critiquing. You ultimately have to say that African womanism is going to be a far superior method within this round because African womanism focuses not just on Black women's rights, but also focuses on unity within the Black community. This is really, really important before creating coalitions that we can actually talk about issues of race. In addition, they completely ignore what the black man is going through within society. You can send the Wilson cards about this, specifically about how because white people are fearful of genetic annihilation, and the Black man is considered the greatest weapon of genetic annihilation for white people. This doesn't mean that we're going to be ignoring Black women. This doesn't mean that we're ignoring Black women and the medical experiments that have been done, and hysterectomies that have been done. But in fact, that Black men are also important within this struggle, and that we have to ultimately remember them as well within this round. Otherwise, otherwise it just destroys these coalitions. And you have to see that a really big conversation within this round has been about this MIT card. And you ultimately have to see that ultimately with the MIT card, this means that the apartment is ultimately going to be rejecting these coalitions within this round, and this means that they can never actually solve for more than issues. Anything more than issues that are specific to Black females within this round, they never are able to solve and separate racism that happens to Black men. In addition, it destroys any type of coalitions that they can create afterwards, because they specifically talk about how The Collins card specifically talks about like heteronormativity and capitalism. However, this is always going to be in relation to the black female, which means that they can never solve for capitalism as it affects the black man, or even white women, or even people who are not white, or any other non-white people, whether they are male or female within this round. That's why African women is ultimately going to be a much better method within this round, because ultimately it focuses on creating these coalitions and unifying the black community before it actually trying to attack these systems of power and these systems of race, and trying to affect these things within this round. You can extend. You can extend the Hudson and Weems card specifically where it says that when we place women at the center of our thinking, we're going about the business of creating historical and cultural matrix from which women claim autonomy and independence over their own lives, but for women of color, such autonomy cannot be achieved in conditions of racial oppression and cultural genocide. Feminism in the modern sense means empowerment of women, and for women of color, such an equality cannot take place unless the communities they live can successfully establish themselves, which means that ultimately African women
That's to be point A.
African women has to come first, African woman has to come first. You can see that they made a couple of arguments against this, and they said that it's just a link of omission. No, we're specifically attacking your literature base. Like, this isn't a link of omission. This is.
And that's why they don't get access to the tournament.
Yeah, in addition, that's also a reason why they don't get access to the current, because ultimately this comes down to a starting point answer. Whereas we start with the methodology of African womanism as opposed to them starting with black feminism, which means that they're not going to get any of the permutations. In addition, our methodology is specifically an indite of like their epistemology. Our method of African womanism is an indite of black feminism. So as a result, they never are going to be able to do this.
And they say coalitions are bad. It's also why they don't get access to the tournament, because we're creating coalitions within the black community.
Yeah, and the negative, and the alternative is all about creating like coalitions, and they literally said that coalitions are bad within this round. In addition, now onto the counterplan. You ultimately have to see that the counterplan is going to be this revolutionary, radical estrangement from like the current white structures. I explained it within the block about how it's not like this little succession. It's like leaving these same white structures. It's not like what Texas was doing. However, they like literally did not answer that in the 1-8R. They completely skipped over it and they said we didn't explain it. However, I did explain it within the block, so you can extend that explanation because they haven't contested it within this round. And they specifically talk about how like, by putting race at the forefront, specifically with the counterplan, that we're ultimately going to be ignoring black women. However, we specifically talk about how it is about like the unity, and so as a result, African women is actually going to be able to, as a methodology that can actually talk about not only black women but also black men. In addition, it's really important to kill the white pimp, because specifically by going by their advocacy statement, it's going to kill all pimps, including black female pimps as well as black male pimps, and it just doesn't show like the power structures that really put them into those positions in which they had to become pimps. So literally, they're not doing any type of examination of like the current power structures when it comes to pimps. However, by specifying white pimps, we are doing the analysis that they're not doing within this.
We provide better methods to kill pimps.
Yeah, and in addition,
only help white women.
Yeah, wait, what?
Under black feminism, the movements only help white women because of the feminism.
Yeah, under black feminism, it's only going to help white women. In addition, you can also extend the ULA card that they talk about. However, the ULA card, it's not about, we aren't any type of like white feminism that they talk about. In addition, it's ultimately going to be an indict on them, because by only focusing on women, it's only going to ignore the black male. It's going to ignore these racial issues that happen to everybody, and ignores these racial issues that happen to everybody. So as you can see, the counterplan at the end of the day is the only thing that you can vote for in this round.
gonna go case then K. Overview case K.
Just make a sure for you to get through this really.
Okay. Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
Judge, they have not contested the entirety of the 1AC control. You need to extend the college card, and it talks about prostitution and the commodification and alienation. They concede that the black women are scripted as the prostitute and sexually appropriated by the powerful. They consider James' evidence was talking about the class system within prostitution. They concede that to understand this position, understanding of positionality is vital. The neg is the one acting within the status quo. The AF is the one who is flipping the power structures, and they have not contested our methods. They have not contested our impact of self-actualization. The net cannot solve for our self-actualization, and you vote F because it's the only impact in this round. Judge, the net has lost this round for a few reasons. The AF is good at. The AF is a good idea. The AF is a good idea. The prosecution killing the pimp is a violent affirmation which next violence to end violence. Extend our non evidence. We're not a reform. We're a radical and violent action that which destroys the power structures by putting the last of the head of things. This is better than just leaving the power structures in place and leaving all pimps besides white pimps in place in order to fight against them, which they don't give a contextual answer of how they would fight against, how would they succeed besides it. And they don't answer the fact that it's an ontological position. The extender Collins card, which talk about the dismemberment and commodification of the black female. The only arguments on the case are this counterclaim that the neck is not articulated, besides saying that they're leaving, but not really leaving and fighting back. They give no way of how they're supposed to, and drop Clayton's argument about how blacks are in an ontological position. They drop the argument about how Texas tries to succeed, and this huge state couldn't do it. Their Wilson card just gives more offense to our argument because they recreated the masculinization of race in this round by saying that black males are the greatest threat to white genetics. Okay, and they completely contradict themselves when they talk about black women only helping white feminism. And they also agree with the fact that black women evolved from white femme because black women were being ignored in the white femme movement as well as the black women movement. They completely dropped this argument about the black women movement, and now their arguments are not unique. Okay, the perms resolve all the issues, and they were dropped. You vote F. The F is all. The neck explains in their Rebecca O card that we need a radical movement. The only radical movement in this debate is prosecuting the reformism that the Rebecca O card critiques talks about the use of law being problematic. Our argument evidence is clear that prosecuting the is the action we have chosen because the law is illegitimate. Perm do both. There is no reason why the strats cannot exist together, and there has been no conceptual answer to the Collins 90 and the 962 evidence, which says one, the individual must self-define and choose their own strat, and two, that this is an experiential question. If they don't like our strat, they don't have to use it. They misread the Taylor card. It says that feminism
is linked with white people.
Feminism is linked with white people, but it ignores black women. If the prosecutor wants to defend themselves against a white pimp or a black female pimp, that is their right. And perm, we do us. If you want to say womanism, say womanism. The neck has linked to the MIT card. When we discussed the issues of black women, we were talking about race. This is a DA. This becomes a DA to the K.
They also dropped the Collins 2000 card.
They also dropped the Collins 2000 card, which talks about how the black female is in the crossroads of deviant and acceptable behavior, and that's a critique of heteronormativity, which the neck just does not have. And now you need the current racial struggles, sacrifice of the black female. The alt reaffirms the supposed ignorance of death of the black females, like St. Anderson, Yvette Smith, and Shelley Frey. We don't ignore black men by by talking about black females, which is their positionality. This is a solvency takeout. When you see all the black males that are taken out, but you do not see the names, I just read this is what the all looks like. It's in the MIT card which talk specifically about the art. The Wells and 91 evidence literally put the black male at the forefront in this discussion. This ignores the history and practice of hysterectomies on black females who give birth to these black babies, and it shows this. No link. The use of patriarchal Collins does not make them want to see the black female that they critique. But no link. Even if you buy that we promote black feminism, the perm, you do you, we do us, solves back for the K. Collins 90 explains the different people use different strats. Our use of black femme is fine.
Like our literature base.
Our literature base is fine, and the starting point argument is something that you're really gonna have to focus on, because what they literally said was that self-actualization comes after these coalitions. We don't reject all coalitions. We're rejecting their type of coalitions in which the self-affirmation does not come first. What they're saying is that they're like what our college cards talk about is that this is the first step before I can even associate with my sister. I have to feel whole, and that's what the self-actualization does. It's a fight against this dismemberment that society doesn't have, these pimps do. And when they literally say that we should spare these other people because it's bad to kill like black pimps and black female pimps and all other types of pimps, they ignore the inherent danger of pimping in society. And when they leave these pimps intact and say that they're only going to attack one subset of the group, that's a band-aid solution, and that's just another dissent to their plan. Because the thing about coalitions is that you get to choose who you associate with. So what is the reasonability of associating with a pimp? There's no reasonability of associating with someone who oppresses you,
Who is killing you.
who is literally killing you, who is literally strangling you. What is the purpose of that?
Misreading of the Taylor.
And that just shows a misreading of the Taylor card. Like, what this debate comes down to is that, one, the AF is a good idea and it has literally not been contested this entire time. The only thing that they have said is that they're critiquing black femme, but in reality, they're critiquing white feminism and saying that misunderstanding black femme and saying that black femme helps white femme.
They turn their case when they say that we need to put black men at the forefront, and they masculinize race again, supercharges the MIT cards, supercharges the reasons why coalitions, the way that they are purporting them, does not work.
Yeah, their type of unity puts black females to the back always, and that precludes self-actualization. That act does not preclude their actions. Go ahead.
The debate. Do you have your flash? Do you have your flash?